The Almighty says this must be a fashionable fight. Has drawn the finest people. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails. Folks, that was my new intro. We may be changing things a little bit here and there. Let me know in the comments what you think, but it's kind of fun. Let me know if you don't understand it or whatever. I'm excited for it though. We're trying to keep making this channel bigger and cooler, and so yeah, this should be fun. Otherwise, I want to talk about my GAC, and not just my GAC, your GAC. I want to talk about GAC in general against top shelf players, like the really good players. I'm not saying like how to beat me. I'm not including myself in that group. I think that I'm like a step lower than that, or maybe like at the lower rung of it. I mean, here's the honest truth, folks. I know that I'm a good player. I think that would be total folly to ignore that, right? I mean, I can say that, I think, without bragging, and as just a general rule of life, folks, I think that it's a very important thing to be able to honestly evaluate your relative skill and abilities. And that doesn't mean like that you should go around bragging about it, but if you're good at something, you should acknowledge it and understand it. Like there's nothing I hate more than false humility. I think that that's a self-destructive and really just grating way to approach things. Like, you can acknowledge if you're good or not, but you don't have to brag about it. It doesn't mean that you deserve something. It just means that you understand what's going on. And so I know that I spent just a minute there talking about this character flaw or virtue or whatever you want to call it, but I do think that's important, folks. It's been something I've been thinking about a lot lately anyways. So, you don't have to be an egotist if you acknowledge that you're a good player. You can be an egotist, but I think that it's healthy to evaluate. Anyways, so I think here's the other thing though. I think that within that evaluation, I'm good, but I'm not the best out there. Obviously, I don't have the best lifetime banners. I don't have the best mods. I make mistakes. You guys see me all the time. I make mistakes, and you got to own it and move on. I feel like I'm improving, but we're all human. We got to make mistakes, and so that being said, there's also the character element of when you're facing someone who's really good. Do you just give up? Do you just capitulate and lose just because they're so good? You're overwhelmed by how good they are, or do you fight? Are you gonna just give up? I mean, it drives me crazy when people are like, I just set my toughest defenses and I don't intend to attack. Because that doesn't prove anything. It just proves that you're afraid of fighting. Like, you don't want to fight. Like, that's fine. Like, actually, don't just give them a headache and leave. Like, that's not a victory. That's not even a Pyrrhic victory. It's just being silly. So, anyways, I want to talk about how we face these top shelf players and how to approach it. And so there's going to be a couple different ways to approach it. One of them is going to be more of a lottery version of like, okay, you might not win. I would say the odds are generally against you, but you're going to give yourself the best chance just because it can, if you're facing a top shelf player and you're outmatched and you can't think of anything else you can do, there is at least one approach where you can just roll the dice and you're like, all right, 25% chance, let's go. Like 25% of people don't beat this person, but if you can give yourself a 25% chance, that's not bad. It's not terrible. The other approaches are going to be a little more nuanced, a little more advanced, and I'm going to show you guys examples of things I've done in the past, and I'm going to choose 3 examples that are all kind of recent. There's no shade at anyone I didn't choose, and obviously no shade at the people I did choose. They're all better players than me, and they're all players that I managed to find like a lever, a way to, like a chink in their armor, I guess, though, a way to manipulate the fight so that it's on my terms rather than theirs. And so we're going to go over the first one at first, the lottery version, and then I'll talk about 3 examples. All of the examples will be in the video description, and so we'll get there. But Gosh, that's been a 5-minute intro. Guys, just want to say real quick, remind you, if you want to support the channel for free, would really appreciate it. Just hit that like button or leave a comment in the comment area, or both. Hit that sub button if you haven't already, and let's jump in. Whoa, Matt, we're in the video replay? What? How'd we get here? Madness. Okay. All right, guys. So here's the first approach. This is the lottery approach, all right? So this is the approach that you take when you know you're outmatched. You know for sure you're not going to be able to win. Well, maybe not for sure, but it's like you want to... You know that if you go toe-to-toe with this guy, you're just going to get destroyed. And so what you do is you set a defense where you keep the majority of teams that you need to clear a board, regardless of what your opponent places on defense, which means, this is a 3v3 example, my opponent almost always kept he always put 2 Galactic Legends down on defense. And so what he did this time was, in that bottom front zone, and this is key, folks, he put a bunch of teams that would trip me up. And so, like Darth Revan and General Skywalker, Luke, all of these teams, he knew that I was maybe going to try to beat these teams with off-meta kind of teams, and he wanted to take the chance. If I lose anything in this bottom zone, then I'm sunk. And I have to, as a good player, I'm going to go in and face... So this is someone I'm facing, by the way, guys. I guess I am calling myself a top shelf player if we're just being totally ridiculously honest. So what he's doing, though, is he's placing teams that he knows that maybe I can beat with off-meta stuff, but maybe I'll trip up. And the thing is, if he can make me trip in that front zone, because I don't know what's in the back zone and I need to keep some teams for it, then he can manipulate the fight in that way. Because if he can go through and one-shot everything efficiently afterward, then he's going to be good to go. Like, if I fail once, he is just going to win, basically. So you put those tripping up teams there and you create uncertainty for your opponent, because in the back zone, they don't know what they're going to face. And so they're going to use weaker teams to counter the teams up front. And there is the gamble. If they beat all those teams with off-meta stuff, then you might be sunk. Like, you don't put Galactic Legends in the back. You just hint that there might be. And then Galactic Legends aren't there, and suddenly your opponent has failed once or twice in that front zone, and you can go in and one-shot all of their teams. Now, against a really good player, they're not going to always make that mistake. They're sometimes just going to say, you know what, screw it, we're going to use Galactic Legends on these teams anyways, and if they do that, then you might just be sunk. And so what happened with this player was he did do that, normally places 2 Galactic Legends down, didn't place any, and at the end of the fight... And this is actually fairly recent as well, folks. It'll be in the video description, but what ends up happening is he ends up attacking afterward. He watched my video, actually, as well. He watched my Twitch replay before attacking, and so what ended up happening, like, we went through, we fought on ships. We had to do the Executor mirror, or not mirror, but the Executor fight. And what ends up happening here, folks, is... I got an okay score. I think I one-shot everything he had, but what ended up happening is he almost one-shot everything. He one-shot everything, but I think he failed twice is what happened. He failed twice. I think I failed once on ship, something like that. You guys can watch the video replay, but what ended up, like, I had one more... He had one more fail than me, and he still was more efficient because I just dropped a ton of banners in that front zone using off-meta stuff. And it was an effective strategy. I ended up getting the better of it just barely. But, I mean, this is effective, guys. I mean, if you had failed one less time, things just got real dicey. So... That's the way you look at solo base when he loses. That's how he loses usually, is an opponent just goes full crazy efficiency on him. And he can't win. I mean, he can. He beats those guys a lot, but it's very difficult for them to. And that's the other thing about it, guys, is you can also just use, like, you use those teams that are really overpowered, and if you understand how you do it, like, you can get high banners against almost all the teams. And honestly, I mean, it's just very tricky, guys. That'll work against most top-end players. Just keep your very best stuff, like, and not just some, you keep all of it. The other option is to put, and this is much more boring, but sometimes your opponent is going to play some more nuanced defense. What you do, you keep like one Galactic Legend that can be used against the majority of Galactic Legends, and then the rest of the things, you just stack your defenses like crazy and force your opponent to not be able to clear that bottom zone of yours, and then you make it a half board game, and sometimes you can win on efficiency. So, I mean, I don't really love this way of doing it. I don't want to face more of this, guys, and I am decent at sniffing it out and beating it, but I have to say, this is the one that's, I feel like this is the one that most top players end up just losing to, like, when they're like, man, I lost. Not because they got outplayed because someone else chose a better scheme, but this is the one that majority of good players are like, man, he just went full efficiency on me and I couldn't match it. And it's a real danger, and that's how you do it against a lot of players. So that's going to be in the video description, the link to that'll be the first one. Now, let's go over some more advanced stuff, shall we? This first one is, you have to pardon my surprised expression up top there. My first one is against, let's see, I don't want to mispronounce his name, Jacob, and he's from what? One of the Ka guilds? I don't remember. I'm sorry, Jacob. But this is a while ago. This is in GAC 18, season 18. So this is 5 seasons ago. But look at his modding. Look at how crazy his mods are back then. This is 6 months ago. I remember now. So 6 months ago or more. Like, my modding versus his. My modding's on the left, his is on the right, and he has all the advantages. Everything is good. Like, look at, I'm not even close on this. It's crazy how much of a disparity there is. And I mean, I have decent mods. I've always had decent mods. Not amazing, but I was definitely going to be struggling uphill against this guy. And so what I ended up doing with this, and now here's where you have to kind of bend your mind a little bit, guys. This is where it gets a little bit crazy, is you have to find a way to make the rules work in your terms. You have to find a way, because if you go toe to toe, like looking at his GAC history, I was just like, you know what, he is a great player. He's going to be able to just bludgeon me with his mods. Like, I can't possibly beat him unless I go full crazy defense here, because here's the thing, he's got so many mods on so many guys. And I should add too, guys, this wouldn't work as well in an 11v11. This is Division 1 before we switched over to like the expanded division, so we're only placing 7 defensive teams. And so what I ended up doing, I was like, you know what, there's a certain point at which his amazing mods, like his bounty hunters are crazy mods, his night sisters, like every team had such good, crazy, amazing mods that I just couldn't compete. I was like, you know what, there's a certain point where when you craft a defense that no matter how good the mods are on the opposing teams, they can't actually beat you. Like bounty hunters aren't going to go in and beat Commander Luke. At least at the time, that's what I was assuming. And so I was like, you know what? You can have the fastest bounty hunters out there. Commander Luke team, you're not going to beat it. You're just not going to. You're not going to win. And so I can create mismatches if I limit the amount he can wield his mods. So he's going to place 7 good teams, but I can use my own mods because my mods, I've been, doing a good job on these. I can find a lever, a way to beat a lot of those teams, and I can prevent him from being able to use all of his mods. And so he's going to end up with a ton of teams that he just can't use because he'll be on offense. He'll try to bring bounty hunters, but if I make it so that all 7 teams that I'm placing can't be beat by bounty hunters, then that's a win for me. Like, you can't beat me if if you don't have enough teams to beat me. And so that was the idea, was place crazy defenses. So we can fast forward a little bit, look at my teams a little. So my opponent attacked, and he ended up not being able to clear my Jedi Master Luke, as you can see here. And you can see my Rey team, I put Bando and all of them. It took multiple attacks here, because I think he tried to use Vader on it. That was back when Vader was capable of it. Commander Luke was there, and then I put Darth Revan and Jedi Master Luke, like a decent Jedi Master Luke team. And then up top, General Skywalker, General Grievous, and Supreme Leader Kylo. Now, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if... His bounty hunters definitely could have beat Grievous. I don't know what I was doing there, frankly. But you can watch the video and see how I ended up approaching it. But, you know, being able to place the right number of teams, for me, like, being able to place these teams, meant that he was not going to be able to use all his teams. And at the end of the day, he didn't have enough teams to be able to beat my Jedi Master Luke. So you guys can watch the replay again in the video description. That was the thing, though, is limiting his ability to wield his mods. If he's using Mon Mothma, he's not going to find a team to use them with, and all those awesome teams are just gone. Like, he doesn't have them. And being able to play it so that I'm like, okay, we're just going to use some of mine versus some of yours, is actually going to make it a lot closer. So, you know, going into the fight, I can't play his game. I have to play my game, and therefore force him into situations that he didn't like. So that was, you know, I was okay with the results of that fight, I guess we can say. So next up, we're going to do something from last season. This is 5v5 again. This is against Sashaisha, and he is a really, really good player, like much better than me. Here, I wanted to show you guys this. Let's just cut back to the thumbnails for just 1 second. Oh, I'm not gonna play that intro video. I need to actually just stop that from having it automatically replay. Whoa, madness. Okay, hopefully that did the trick. If not, my bad. So let me show you guys the thumbnails to all of these. So this is the thumbnail from the most recent one, folks. The best slugfest match in Seasons. This one is against Sashaisha. He was on a 64 win streak. He was in the top 5 in Division 1 the last 3 seasons previously. And his mods are really crazy. So, I mean, totally uphill fight. This guy is a really good player. Watches me play, almost not fair in a lot of ways. So yeah, let's go back to the fight. So look at his mods. I mean, they're not as crazy overwhelming as they were as the other opponent was, the Jacob one previously, but still pretty good, pretty advantageous. He has more relics than me. He has more lifetime than me, I believe. Yeah, he's one of the first people with a higher lifetime than me. You can see on the very top right, the higher lifetime. You can see, I mean, I've had 5 more offensive wins than him, and otherwise he's just a really, like, almost impossible player to beat. He's, like I said, he's 64 win streak is so impressive at the top of Division 1. Really crazy. And so the idea here was, though, folks, he wanted top 10. And I'm like, man, I can't find a single chink in his armor. His modding was on point. He was just a really good player. The idea here, though, was my opponent is going to want to get top 10 again. I knew he was, and I knew that he was going to be leaning on a few of his key Galactic Legend squads. And so what I ended up doing, and I knew he was going to watch my videos, so I kind of put out, I mean, this is something that you guys can't do necessarily if you're not a content creator, but I did put out a few things of like, man, it's going to be so crazy. I talked a little bit about ships, and I kind of wanted him to think about, because the only advantage I have was I had a 7-star Executor. He had a 4-star, and I was like, I was like, okay, well, I wanted to kind of mislead him and make him think that I was going to focus on Executor and try to get my advantage there. And when in reality, I was like, no, we're going to do this in squads, because maybe he's going to be thinking about ships. But one way or another, regardless of if my ploy had worked about him thinking about me wanting to counter him in ships. The biggest thing about this, guys, was like I can't go toe to toe with him. He's a better player. Like he's more efficient than me. He knows how to do the fights probably better. Like he's just a better player. Like that. Here comes that honest evaluation again, right? Like we can't be too foolish and assume that we can go toe to toe with this guy because he'll crush us. So I thought though, look, he's going to be putting his best teams, or keeping his best teams for offense, because he wants not only a win, he wants an efficient win, because he wants to get top 10 again. Like he's gotten it 3 times in a row. He wants it a 4th time. He wants to continue his win streak, and so after that, I was like, you know what? He's not going to place his Kenobi team. I don't think Lord Vader was out at this point, and so I was like, I don't think he's going to place his best stuff. I think he's going to place his executor, but it's only a 4 or 5 star, whatever. So, you know, we'll keep our executor just to be able to delete his and not have to worry about it. And then I'll maybe have an advantage in ships, because then I only have to beat one other good fleet on his side. But otherwise, I was like, we're just gonna place all the GLs here because we can. Because I think we're proof, because he wants to be top 10. He wants to be efficient, therefore he needs Kenobi on offense. And so I placed this defense, guys. This is after the change, of course. So, I guess Lord Vader was out. So I placed Lord Vader. I placed this Maul with Darth Revan team, which actually was a mistake. He got very good banners with a really cool squad. And that's the thing you also have to realize is sometimes your opponent who's top shelf is going to be top shelf and do some crazy innovative things. And so, you know, but I did place a Rey Cat team, like the new puzzle box team or whatever that Fatal was calling it. It was, you know, it was relatively unknown at the time. And then I placed Kenobi with Bad Batch in the back, knowing that if he could get through this top zone, he might, or my bottom zone, sorry, he might be able to get to my General Kenobi team. And I mean, he'd be able to get there, but would he have the right team to be able to counter it? After trying to counter Lord Vader and the Rey team, Rey Cat, I wasn't sure. Now, granted, I was without my Kenobi, Cat and Rey and Lord Vader, but I was relatively certain I wasn't going to have to counter any of those because he wanted to keep them on offense. So, you know, you can kind of, because he had that one chink. He was such a good player that he wanted to get top 10, and therefore I was able to outmaneuver him a little bit. You guys can obviously watch this video as well, and there's a lot of ups and downs, and I gave myself a great chance, and things happened. This is one of the more dramatic matches I've had, actually. You guys should check it out. It's obviously a little bit long, but which is what she said, but it's a good one, folks. You can listen to my explanation there. It's a little more fresh. But let's go to our final one. This is actually my most recent match that I've played in GAC. And so, facing iPenguinn from Chewbacca, something like that, from that guild. And he's an amazing player, definitely a better player than me. And I mean, he's got the mod advantage for the most part. It's not as crazy as you might think, but he definitely does have a mod advantage. And what's better or worse, depending on which side of the table you're on, he's just a better player on like almost every count. He's amazingly modded. All of his mods are relevant, and he is a very tough player to beat. And you know, this was going into it. I was like, man, I've already lost 2 this season. I really don't want to have a 9-3 season. Really, really don't want to have 2 9-3 seasons in a row. 9-3 was already the worst 5v5 mark I'd gotten in the previous one, and I really wanted to avoid that. But I'm like, I don't know if I have a choice. Like, this guy is also crazy. He's always top 10. He is here. We can click on. Here's what the finals was. He went into this match number 3, and he's just always in the top 10. Like, I always recognized his name. Whenever I screenshotted his name, people are like, oh yeah, I see him on the leaderboard all the time. And I'm like, yeah, he's a really good player. He knows. And looking at his GAC history, sometimes you see people who go in and like they ask their opponent like, hey, I'm trying to get top 10. Can you like let me win? we'll just like have a fluff match and you don't have to try. You just put your worst teams down and I'll put my worst. And, that happens. That's happened a few times recently. Quite a few, in fact, in Division 1. It's kind of frustrating because some of these top guilds have all their members in the very, very top echelons. And so they just feed their friends wins. I mean, that happens. So this guy, I looked at his GAC history and he is not that guy. He's solid gameplay all the way through. And with him, this was a really challenging one because, I wanted to win, obviously, at all costs, basically. But this guy always cleared and never got full cleared himself. And so, like, what do we do here? Can you see how many defenses he's had? I guess we cut that off. But he's had way more defenses than me. His average speed mods are way faster. Everything's stacked in his favor. Once again, he's got way more relic levels than I do. Is just pretty gross. And it's like, okay, what can we do here? And at the end of the day, what I ended up doing with him was I had a pretty firm rule for myself that I'd only place 2 Galactic Legends on defense the whole season in case I ended up with a match like this where my opponent might scout me and might make certain assumptions when they were on offense and once they did scout me. And so I placed 2 Galactic Legends up front and then I placed 1 in the back to defy what he had been doing. So this was like a GAC long, like a season long scam kind of like where I just, in case I had to face a guy like this, I would keep all of my GLs except for 2. This time I placed 3, hoping that he would fall for it. And, after scouting him and everything, he only ever placed 2 as well. So what ended up happening with this, you guys can watch it, obviously it's going to be linked, but what ended up happening was he actually did fail in my front zone, I believe. He failed on something. Okay, he failed on fleets, which is totally a fluke. I just got lucky there. Like, he just couldn't clear Executor, which is another reason Executor is dumb. But what happened was, when he attacked before my stream, which I really appreciated. He didn't even attack Ray, so I wasn't sure if he had the right teams for it. But at the end of the day, he placed one of those defenses that I was telling you guys about, where, like, he had a couple good teams. Yeah, so you can see he has Jedi Master Luke on defense and Ray, and then a bunch of other teams like Darth Revan, and there was a General Skywalker team below this, Luke team. It's all very tough to beat, but what ended up happening here was I thought maybe there was a possibility that I have 3 GLs, he has 3. I needed to make sure that maybe he was just playing coy. Maybe he was being crazy and keeping all of his GLs on offense, or not on offense, on, like, maybe he had kept more on defense than I thought he was. Maybe he was just keeping his 1 GL that he knew he could counter my Ray with, and he just wanted to wait and see what my score was, just to see if he needed to add, like, armorer to the Eternal and Watt, or if, whatever. I just wasn't sure what he was going to do. Like, he had failed on Executor, so I was like, we have some space to give, but one way or another, I wasn't sure. He's creating so much uncertainty. You can see, like, we have to use 2 GLs, and 3v3 you have to use a Galactic Legend to counter one. So I have 3 GL, there's 2 GLs to deal with here, and I only have 3. But then he also had a General Skywalker team that I wanted to take down. Yeah, here we go. I wanted to take down just using my 3rd GL, and looking at like his scores, I knew that he had used a Galactic Legend to kill my General Skywalker. So I just wasn't sure. I was pretty sure he didn't have a GL in the back, but at the same time, could I really afford to have, like, if I can't clear that back zone, I'm at serious risk. And so I had to make a decision in the game as well. So I had a good scheme on defense. I think, it looked like I was going to have a good situation against him, but then you have to make adjustments against these players. I also decided, you know what, we're going to use a pretty sketchy, like, Han Han Chewie with Bam lead and see what happens against this General Skywalker team, which is a counter that I kind of developed myself anyways. But you can see, I mean, with 5s in Arc, it was just... I just wasn't sure. I didn't have time to test it. We just had to see if it would work. And so it did work for terrible banners. Everything I got in the front zone was terrible. It was ruinous. But at the end of the day, once I managed to take out his teams here, I had 1 GL left. He had actually, in fact, placed his Lord Vader team on defense in the back, but I had kept a GL and I was able to counter that. So you guys can see the results of that match as well. But it's a fairly tricky thing, folks, trying to beat these guys. And the idea here is not to just like make this amazing decision, like better decisions than them throughout the match. I mean, you have to do that on some level, but the idea is you have to find the levers. You have to find the things that are going to mess with them a little bit, just enough to give you that little chink, that little chance. And it's like, well, maybe my arrow is just gonna go, maybe it's not going to find its mark. Maybe it's gonna get close, but I can't do it. But the idea is to give yourself the chance that you can. And in this case, I was able to sniff out his trap and set my own trap. So I did the 2 things that I needed to do. And so, I mean, we both trapped each other. Who's going to do better? I mean, if I can complete both steps, I can sniff out the trap and set a trap. He can set the trap, but he can't sniff it out, then I'm going to win. And this is all fairly advanced stuff. It's tough to figure it out. You want to look at your opponent's offensive range. And this was very surprising, actually, for a player who was number 3 moving into it. I thought he was for sure going to go for efficiency, because he's better at that than me. He's better at everything than me. But in this case, because of my... I think the final layer that really did it for me was... throughout the season, I just kept most of my GLs. He didn't expect a 3rd, so he thought he was safe to use Galactic Legend on my General Skywalker, and therefore, when he got to the back, he was surprised by my Rey and couldn't clear. So, anyways, folks, I think you get it. I hope this was helpful. Maybe I rambled too much. Maybe it was just incoherent ranting. Maybe it came across as bragging. I hope not. I thought that it was worth exploring this topic and trying to explain what my thought process was and how you can kind of bend things to go in your favor rather than being forced to fight them on their grounds, because on equal ground they're just going to pound you to death. You're going to get destroyed, and it's not pretty. It's not. It's, in fact, it's ugly. It's very much worth paying some attention to trying to do this. Now, the thing about this is, guys, so I could maybe do this against a lot of my opponents. I can't do this every single match. It's just not possible. There's too much preparation work. There's too much. And so people ask, like, how do you beat all these good players? How do you lose to, like, lesser players? And I'm not even, like... not always lesser players. Sometimes I'm playing some really good players, but, and I lose. But the idea here isn't that it's not going to be a win-all method. Like, you have to have some matches where you don't put as much brain power into it, and people can do this to you if you're not careful. And so, I mean, can I play at this high of level every single match? That is absolutely not the case. I wish I could, but I can't, and that's okay. You take losses, but when it matters, when you really have to face someone who's really good, sometimes you can step up if you save that mental energy and make it happen. So I hope you like this, guys. This has been going on for long enough. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Was this good? Did I explain it well? Should I expound more? Should I expound less? I would love to hear it. Maybe we make a more condensed version of this video or something, if that's something that's called for. But one way or another, guys, thank you all so much for watching. And remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails. And in this case, I actually did. Woo! Go Xaereth.